This video is designed for you if you're able to write some simple Python programs just using text, but you want to start making your Python programs look a bit more exciting, so they start behaving and looking a bit more like a game. So we're going to have a really quick introduction to the Pygame module so that we can display some graphics and make your text-based programs become visual gaming projects. So all of the code that you see in this video you'll be able to find if you search for GitHub, pddring and Pygame, which will take you to this website just here. There are some example files that you can download and run just on their own to show you how to get started in Pygame or to do different colours or display images, all of that sort of stuff. This video instead is going to focus on this file, pygamehelper.py, and inside here there are 3 useful functions as well as some sample code that you can try just to try and help you change from text-based programs into graphical programs. So I'm assuming that you've done some simple Python before. We're using Python 2.7, which uses raw input and print, which doesn't need any brackets. So we've got a simple program here, and I'm assuming that you've used raw input to ask a question before. So raw input is asking what is your name. You can type whatever you like. That gets saved into the variable name, and then line 2 is displaying hello and then whatever you typed in, so hello Bob. We want to be able to do that instead of just with text on one part of your screen. We want a nice graphical window that we can put some images on, make it look pretty, so that you can start making games instead. So the first thing to do is to download a copy of this pygamehelper.py. So you can grab it, click on raw to see the raw source codes, select it all, Control A, Control C to copy, and then paste it into a new file, call the file pygamehelper.py, and make sure that that file lives in the same folder as your Python file that you want to write your code in. At the moment you don't need to understand what's in here. Feel free to have a look, to tweak it, to change it, to adapt it, whatever, but at the moment we don't need to understand how it works. There's just some functions in there that will help us write our code. Okay, so I'll get rid of the raw input and print, and we'll start with these lines of code here. So first of all it's saying import everything from Pygame helper, which lives in the same folder. It tells Pygame to get ready to start displaying our game. We've got a variable called screen, which is our display, and you can tell it how wide and how high you want the window to be. And then we're filling the screen in a colour. We're waiting for a key before we quit. So if I run this, we should have a window that's 800 pixels wide by 600 pixels across. But at the moment it hasn't filled it in white, and it just looks a bit dodgy on screen. So let's try and understand how Pygame works. The idea is to make sure that your graphics don't flicker as you draw one part of the screen. Let's imagine that we were making a racing game. If you were doing this with Python Turtle, or even if you're just drawing it by hand, you'd have to maybe draw the road, you'd have to draw maybe a skid mark on it, then you'd have to draw the car that you're driving, and each time you draw it would flicker a little bit as you draw something else on top of it. Now that would look rubbish in a computer game. All you want to see is the final full display of your beautiful driving game. You don't want to see any flickering whatsoever. So Pygame uses a technique known as double buffering, which is like a piece of paper. It's as though what you see on screen is, whilst your eyes see that, the computer's already drawing the next frame of your game, and when it's finished drawing that, it will flip the screen over so that you can see what it's been drawing whilst it draws the next frame. So here, even though we've said fill the screen in white, so full on red, full on green, full on blue, we have to do pygame.display.flip, flip, before any changes actually appear on the screen. So hopefully this time, yep, we've got the right colour on here. So if we ask a question with raw input, and then display the answer like we had before. So we could have name equals raw input, what is your name, and then print name. If we run this, it will look like our Pygame program has crashed, but what's actually happening is the whole program's frozen until raw input carries on. So until you type your answer here, the Pygame window has frozen. Once raw input has got its answer, then Pygame carries on, but that's a pretty rubbish way of running your game. You don't want it to freeze every time you ask a question. So that's why I've made some functions in here in Pygame Helper to let you still be able to ask the user a question, but inside your graphical window. So instead of raw input, we've got raw input at, and raw input at has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different parameters. First of all, you need to tell it where to display, so we're putting it onto the screen surface. Then we want the position of the message, so we've got a tuple, that's 2 variables inside brackets. We want the x and the y coordinate, let's just put it top left. So the first number's x, second number's y. Then coming up next is the prompt rectangle. So this is the position of the box where you can type stuff in. So first is left, then it's top. I want it just underneath the text that we're displaying, so let's say 20, 200 wide by say 20 high. Then we need to tell it the message, which we've already got. What's your name, how big the text is, and what colour the text is. So let's just guess 20 for the size of the text, and then we've got a tuple, so something inside brackets. Let's have the text in black, 0, 0, 0. Okay. So now, rather than freezing the program and asking your question in the text window, we've got an equivalent of raw input that works in your gaming window. So it says, what's your name? Bob. But we're still, we're still printing the text to the text console down here rather than this window. To fix that, we just replace print, the print statement, with print at, needs brackets this time. I suppose we should say hello and then the name. And print at is very similar to raw input at, it just needs the screen, the position, the size and the colour. So tell it to display the text onto the screen. We need to know where to display it, so all the way across the left, that's the x coordinate. Let's have it below the input box, maybe 40. Then we've got the message, then we've got the size of the text, and let's put it in red. So red comes first, then green, then blue. Okay, so it asks you your name, and this time it will display the text on the graphical window, which is much more useful than having to flick between the graphics and the console window down here. So there's 3 functions defined in Pygame Helper. One is raw input at, one is print at, and the other is wait for key. Wait for key, instead of making you, instead of letting the user type in lots of keys and then press enter, wait for key just waits for a single key to be pressed. So all of the code that I've gone through just here, you can find similar code in Pygame Helper. For example, if you want an example of how to use print at, just grab the comments above print at, copy that and run that. If you want an example of how to use raw input at, there's some code just above raw input at here that you can copy and paste. And similarly for wait for key, there's an example of how you can use that just here. So in your programs, the idea is if you want to put graphics on your screen, you can do things like, let's load an image. So we'll make a variable called image logo equals pygame.image.load. If you want to find out how to do this, back on the Pygame examples website, there's more examples of how to load images in this file here, text and images. So we've got pygame.image.load. I'm going to load an image which again lives in the same folder as our current file. And then to display the image, we just have the name of the surface you want to display to, .blit. And blit is a way of quickly copying from this surface to this surface. So we're blitting onto the screen from the logo image, and we need to say where it goes. So let's put it at 0, 0. So now you can see, hopefully, how you can build up your game with graphics and text. And you can play around with where your text goes, what font it's in, what colour it's in, all of those sorts of things. So let's just try and finally make this raw input box go over here somewhere. So the coordinates of the text itself, maybe 100 across by 100 down. The raw input, the text boxy bit, we'll put just beneath it. Oh, maybe not far enough down, but you get the idea. A little bit further down. And then the bit that says hello and the name, that needs to be further down as well. Let's try. So hopefully, if you're used to writing code with lots of print statements and raw input, all you need to do is set up your import at the top, make a screen object, initialize a Pygame, and then everywhere where you've got print, change it to print at. Everywhere you've got raw input, just change it to raw input at, and then you'll need to put in the coordinates of where you want the text to go. And you should be able to start creating your own games in here.